Michael Strahan.
And good morning, America. We hope you had a good weekend. It was a fiery one for the NFL after those Friday night comments from President Trump, where he called on NFL owners to fire players who take a knee in protest during the national anthem.
And the players, well, they united on the field Sunday. More than 100 knelt, and others stood arm in arm with their teammates. And some teams chose not to take the field during the national anthem. And then there was this dramatic moment. This former Army Ranger, he was the only member of the Pittsburgh Steelers that went out on the field during the national anthem, hand over heart, and he stood there alone.
Yeah, he had served in Afghanistan.
He did. And millions taking to social media, as you can imagine. These hashtags sparked 3.8 million tweets, many of those supporting the protests, others against it. And the president, well, doubling down, drawing a line, tweeting, "Standing with locked arms is good, kneeling is not acceptable."
Well, ABC's Gio Benitez, he is outside the Washington Redskins stadium. And Gio, you were there in the locker room last night. What was the feeling in that locker room?
Hey there, Michael. Good morning. You know, inside that locker room, there was anger and disappointment. You know, we are just miles from the White House. This is essentially the president's backyard. And player after player told me again and again that they are deeply American. On Sunday Night Football, the Washington Redskins starting the game with arms linked, some kneeling during the national anthem. The Oakland Raiders sitting down. We went into the Redskins locker room where it seemed players were talking more about what it means to be an American than their winning game. What message do you have for the president?
Help make things right. It's not acceptable and not tolerated.
From coast to coast, even in London, players sending that message to the president from the football field, linking arms like Patriots quarterback Tom Brady, hundreds kneeling, some raising fists like Giants receiver Odell Beckham Jr. after scoring a touchdown. The players putting on an unprecedented display of solidarity for their league, blasted this weekend by President Trump for allowing them to kneel in protest of racial injustice.
It is kind of a surreal scene because
both the Tennessee Titans and the Seattle Seahawks refusing to leave their locker rooms during the national anthem. The Pittsburgh Steelers also absent from the sideline during the anthem, all except one, former Army Ranger Alejandro Villanueva. The firestorm beginning Friday with Trump speaking at a rally in Alabama.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, "Get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!"
And doubling down in a series of tweets Sunday, writing, "Standing with locked arms is good, kneeling is not acceptable. NFL attendance and ratings are way down. Boring games, yes, but many stay away because they love our country."
I got a daughter. She's going to have to live in this world. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make sure, you know, she can look at my dad, look at her dad and be like, "Hey, you did something, you tried to make a change." You feel me?
Trump defending his remarks Sunday.
This has nothing to do with race or anything else. This has to do with respect for our country.
His son, Donald Jr., going after the NFL commissioner, tweeting, "If only Roger Goodell cared as much about domestic abuse and traumatic brain injury as he does about disrespecting America." And overnight, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell told Sports Illustrated that the way that the league reacted to the president's remarks actually made him very proud. And when he was asked if he was bothered by the president's words, he said this: "No, we live in an imperfect society. A public discourse makes us strong." Michael.
All right, thank you, Gio. You see the president didn't back down. Well, you know, the players aren't backing down either. Both are very stubborn.
And neither are the owners. We saw NFL owners there on the sidelines as well, locking arms with their team's players. ESPN's Ryan Smith is here with more. And Ryan, the protests are now going beyond the football field.
Absolutely, Rob. An incredible scene. Athletes from other sports, entertainers, scores of others taking a knee or finding other ways to show support for the protesters, and many using their platform to take issue with the president's comments.
by calling on NFL player protesters to be fired, President Trump managing to get the whole league fired up. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell releasing a statement calling the president's comments divisive. The NFL airing an ad emphasizing unity during the league's Sunday night game.
Inside these lines, we can bring out the best in each other.
Many owners taking the field, throwing their support behind their teams. Owners from 8 teams during the anthem, side by side with their players. Patriots owner Robert Kraft, who reportedly donated $1 million to President Trump's inaugural celebrations, writing in a statement, I am deeply disappointed by the tone of the comments made by the president. President Trump also taking aim at NBA superstar Steph Curry after the two-time MVP told reporters that he would not join his team, the champion Golden State Warriors, if they decided to visit the White House.
I don't want to go. That's really good.
Trump lashing out that Curry's invitation was withdrawn. This prompting superstar LeBron James to call the president a bum.
He's now using sports as the platform to try to divide us.
But it was the NFL's response to the president that took center stage this weekend. Some of the sport's biggest names weighing in. Overnight, before the game featuring Washington's hometown team, analyst and former NFL player Chris Collinsworth challenging the president.
I would just ask the president consider apologizing for the SOB line and maybe invite some of these players to the White House.
Hall of Fame quarterback Terry Bradshaw disagrees with the protest, but stands behind the protesters' right to do it.
I'm not sure if our president understands those rights.
Meanwhile, the hashtag #TakeAKnee going viral, tweeted nearly 4 million times. Pharrell kneeling in solidarity at a concert dedicated to the city of Charlottesville overnight.
If I want to get on my knees right now for the people in my city, for the people in my state, that's what that flag is for.
In response to the protests, supporters of the president taking to Twitter to criticize player protesters with the hashtags #Stand for our anthem, Take a stand, and Boycott NFL.
Now, the reactions to the protests were varied. Former Buffalo Bills quarterback and Hall of Famer Jim Kelly posted that he hopes Bills players stand and lock arms if they protest. But in the end, we're talking over 100 players taking a knee. This is thought to be the largest group of protesters doing that since Colin Kaepernick started it all.
All right, Ryan. I know, and it's like people are forgetting why Cap started this, which we are going to explain in just a little bit.
Absolutely, Robin. But right now, we're going to talk to Baltimore Ravens tight end Ben Watson, who stood arm in arm with his teammates on Sunday. And Ben joins us from Pikesville, Maryland. And good morning, Mr. Watson. How you doing, my friend?
Good morning, Mr. Strahan. I'm doing well.
Well, Ben, we saw you on the field yesterday, standing arm in arm with your teammates. But take us into the locker room before the game. What was that moment like before you walked out on the field?
Oh, really, I'll take you back to Friday. We were in London. We didn't really know about the president's comments. And once that kind of filtered out and guys saw it on social media, there was a tremendous amount of emotion. There was a tremendous amount of hurt. We felt, as many others did, that this was a direct attack on our brotherhood. And obviously the name calling is something that we don't stand for. But even to imply that we don't have the right to express ourselves in that way, whether you agree or not, is something that we really took to heart. And it was an emotional time. Chapel that morning was emotional as guys talked about what they wanted to do, wanting to respect our country and show their love for their country, but also wanting to respond in solidarity. And so it kind of was organic. We got on the field. Some guys kneeled. Some guys had decided to kneel that didn't before. Other guys locked arms. I locked arms and I also pointed to the skies because I really believe that the Lord will really have to have his hand on us when it comes to reconciling our differences.
Now, we know in the past you said you didn't agree with Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem, but as you said, you locked arms with your teammates in support of those who did decide to kneel. In the wake of the president's comments, have your feelings changed at all?
Well, initially, last year, when Colin first kneeled, I said that if I was able to play, I tore my Achilles and I wasn't able to play, that I wouldn't be kneeling. But I support him in what he decided to do. I haven't kneeled, but the reasons why he kneeled, the police brutality, the excessive force, as he said, the oppression of different people of color, those are all concerns of mine and have been since before Colin decided to kneel and have been for a lot of other people in our country as well. He just decided to do his protest in that way. My feelings have not changed about those issues. I'm still very concerned about those issues. I still have conversations in the locker room about those issues. I still speak and write about those issues. I think what we saw yesterday, was really a response, an emotional response to the words of President Trump. And, those words really cut deep on a number of levels. For a lot of us, and not just guys in the locker room, but guys outside. And I think what we saw, the influx and the increase in guys protesting, while many of them are concerned about those issues, rightfully so, part of what we saw yesterday was a direct response to the president's comments.
Well, Ben, we really appreciate you spending some time with us. We know you just got off a flight from London yesterday, so we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Mr. Watson.
Okay, Michael, thanks. Let's get a view from the White House right now. Our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, is here. And Cecilia, I know your reporting is that White House officials say this was not an off-the-cuff comment by the president. This was something planned out. I guess my big question is why? Coming out of the last couple of weeks, he'd gotten high marks for bipartisanship in the reaction to the hurricanes, reaching a deal with Democrats on the debt limit. Why throw out this hand grenade now?
And I should say not entirely off the cuff. He did have NFL written in those prepared remarks when he gave that speech in Alabama. He did go a little bit further. I shouldn't say a little bit. He went further than what was in those written remarks. But George, look, multiple people that I've spoken to inside this administration firmly believe that at the end of this debate, America will be on the president's side in his notion that players should take a stand during the national anthem. They think that in the end, he's going to come out. They're going to come out in full support of this. But look, this is a president who has a history of throwing out inflammatory remarks, right, to often distract from controversies that he's dealing with. We've got health care on the bubble right now. He was down there in Alabama in a race that as candidate that he's endorsing may or may not lose, right? So there's that. I've also got to tell you from what I'm hearing from people inside the White House, they are saying, and we heard the president himself say, this is not about race. And I've got to say, this is so much bigger than the president versus the players. People in this country are going to feel completely against this notion that this is not about race.
If the president comes out and says this is not about race, that's a little bit like saying I'm not a crook. If you have to say it, you're already in trouble.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to sensitive issues like this, you know, past presidents, I want to talk to Matt about this, past presidents have done their best to put out the flame, not fan the flame, not throw gasoline on it. And many have pointed out that President Trump's language, SOB, referring to NFL players who peacefully protest racial injustice, SOB, that language far stronger than what the president said about white supremacists in Charlottesville, where, let's not forget, a young woman, Heather Heyer, was killed, Matt.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think two things Donald Trump is forgetting, and I think he has a responsibility on the other thing, is the first thing is organized sports is a lot like the military. It's a brotherhood and sisterhood, that the bond is with the people that are on the team together against a common enemy. And so when he attacks them, they bind together just like it happens in the military. The other thing, Robin, today is the 60th anniversary of the Little Rock Nine. The folks that desegregated Little Rock Central High School in Little Rock. We've come a long way in our country, but we still have a long way to go. The president has an incredible loyal following. And if he takes that power that he has with his loyal following and brings them along to a place that actually brings the country together, the highest point of his presidency is when he did things that unified the country during the hurricanes and on the debt ceiling and on finding the funding for that. It was his highest point of his presidency. He's diverted again to this divisive language that is not going to benefit him in the short term.
And Ryan, I want to bring you back into this conversation. So what do you think happens next in the league and for professional athletes in general? And when I say professional athletes, I just don't mean football. He's talked about basketball, Steph Curry, and all these other things. What happens in general? What do you think should happen?
Well, I think there's a long way to go. So there's a couple of things here. First, in talking to some sources, there was a great deal of empowerment after President Trump's comments. There was anger, but then there was also the sense of, hey, now we have a platform. This is one of the very unique times that the NFL Management Council and the players are on the same team. They're unified. And so I think that could lead to a lot more protests in different forms. We'll have to see where the line is on that one. But I think what's interesting here is Cecilia mentioned the point of that many people would feel like the Americans would be on the president's side. I think for protesters, this is about so much more than just making the statement about injustice. This is about trying to get somebody to seek to understand what they are talking about. So when the president, I think, is thinking about sides, I wonder if there was a desire to really understand why people are taking a knee. I think when that happens, you might see some change.
And when Colin Kaepernick first took the knee, he wanted to start a conversation. It looked like that conversation is full-blown right now.
Not going to end anytime soon. The president's coming out of this fight with the NFL, facing another big week of challenges. It's in a tough political